This video is brought to you by Mack Weldon. They make great clothing. I'm wearing it right now. Prove otherwise. You can't. Of all the Easter egg and reference videos that I've done over the years, it's this one covering Rogue One, a Star Wars story, that's the most comprehensive by far, due to the time period that it's set in, that being right before the events of A New Hope. There is a ridiculous amount of links to the other movies, including locations, characters from across the 8 films, 10 films, including those brought back from the dead, plus vehicles, nods to Star Wars Rebels and the Clone Wars, the Death Star, Darth Vader, the Force, and a whole lot more. So come with me as I rattle off as many as I can with the promise of a loot crate giveaway at the end. Bear in mind that there will be spoilers, and these Easter eggs will range from incredibly obscure to blindingly obvious. But I gotta include the obvious ones, because otherwise people will yell at me on Twitter, and frankly, well, you know what, it doesn't really matter because Twitter isn't real life, so you know, who cares? Alright, let's get into it. At the beginning of the film on Lamu, we get a look at moisture evaporators, which we also see at Luke's home on Tatooine, plus the return of blue milk, which actually comes from banthas and is quite common across the galaxy. We also visit Jeda, a place considered to be the first civilization to explore the nature of the Force and home to the Temple of the Wills. Its followers are referred to as the Church of the Force, Lor San Tekka from The Force Awakens being a leader of this particular religious sect. The word Wills comes from the original name from the first Star Wars film, which was The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Wills. Just bloody rolls off the tongue. Both Chirrut Imwe, who has a bowcaster not dissimilar to Chewbacca's, and Baze Malba were former temple protectors, and though it's not stated explicitly, Chirrut appears to have low-level Force sensitivity, perhaps from his years of dedication and the fact that he has to rely on his other senses. In the novelization, he's also said to know that Cassian is a captain without being told so. His abilities are also made evident by the fact he's able to sense a Kyber crystal from some distance away, which act as power sources for both the Death Star and lightsabers. Now, we've never seen a Kyber crystal in a Star Wars movie before, but a variation on them that's spelt differently was first introduced in the New Hope sequel book, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, back in 1978. There's a moment on Scarif where some stormtroopers are overheard mentioning how the BT-15 is obsolete, though they could be saying T-15. I couldn't find confirmation of that, but regardless, it mirrors this conversation from A New Hope.
You seen that new BT-16? Yeah, the other guy telling me about it. They say it's...
The traditional, I have a bad feeling about this line is spoken by K2SO as they're entering the Imperial Records facility, where we also see mouse droids and a whole bunch of other robots that we know are scattered across the film, including gonk droids, and we also get probe droids on Jedha. Saw Gerrera, who we'll talk about more in a moment, says the line, "It's a trap," like Admiral Akbar from Return of the Jedi. We do get some other Mon Calamari also. This one in particular is based off Winston Churchill. Within Saw's stronghold, aside from a weird mind-reading squid monster that latches onto Bodhi Rook. I don't know what that was about. Anyway, we get the Star Wars version of chess, to Jarek, this time depicted with actual physical pieces as opposed to just being a hologram. We also get some Imperial uniforms stolen after an attempted inspection of a ship, like when Luke, Han, and Obi-Wan infiltrated the Death Star. And Warwick Davis, who plays Wicket the Ewok, cameos as this weird-looking fella.
Come on. Rogue One.
When Bodhi Rook is bluffing his way through a comms conversation, it's similar to this scene from the original trilogy.
Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
We get a few familiar locations. Yavin 4, the rebel base of operations from A New Hope, complete with this guy. Don't know what he's doing, but you know, I'm sure this is great and important work. Coruscant is also briefly seen when we get a flashback to Jyn as a child, which was her and her family's former home when Galen Erso worked for Celestial Power, which is detailed in the prequel novel Catalyst. It was there that he was under the impression that he was conducting energy research for altruistic reasons. This movie also takes place right before the Senate was disbanded for good, which we hear about in this scene.
I have just received word that the Emperor has dissolved the council permanently. The last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away.
Which I guess explains all the secrecy surrounding the Death Star. We hear the traditional Wilhelm scream with a stormtrooper's death. A stolen Imperial code is used to get past the shield surrounding Scarif, just like we got in Return of the Jedi. And director Gareth Edwards mentioned that a huge part of the inspiration for this film comes from a very specific sequence from The Empire Strikes Back.
Probably a big influence on our film was in Empire Strikes Back. There's that section in the trench in Hoth. I thought it lasted like half an hour as a kid, and then when we go to watch it back as an adult, you go, hang on, it's like 2 minutes long. And so we tried to make that last a lot longer in our film, but that kind of ground battle, like warfare, that is just an amazing thing when you mix it with Star Wars.
There's a few references to both the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. Saw Gerrera is introduced in Season 5 of the Clone Wars, and he's actually trained by Anakin Skywalker and learns how to disable Separatist tanks, with those tactics perhaps being passed on to his Rebel forces. One of the project code names from the Imperial archives is Black Saber, which could be a reference to the Dark Saber, seen in both the Clone Wars and Rebels, or it's not. I don't know. The ship The Ghost is seen as part of the Rebellion fleet, though because this movie is set a few years after where Star Wars Rebels is currently up to, it's unclear how many of the crew are actually still alive. Hera could possibly be, as we hear the name General Syndulla over the loudspeaker at Yavin 4. That's of course if she gets promoted, or it could be a nod to her father, Cham. Though we do know that Chopper is still alive, as apparently he can be seen on the Rebel base. And it's a shame that he makes it, because he's very unpleasant. Also, the Hammerhead cruisers stolen from the episode A Princess on Lothal are used to great effect to take out the shield generator on Scarif. A number of characters make their debut in the Rogue One prequel novel mentioned earlier, including Orson Krennic. His accent has a slight Australian twang, as opposed to the standard Imperial British, possibly because he wasn't born into an upper class family, like a lot of them, and he really had to claw his way up through the ranks. His white uniform is also very reminiscent of Grand Admiral Thrawn, but we've actually seen one like this before on Wolf Yularen from A New Hope. Also, interestingly, in this scene, there's an empty chair, which probably belonged to Krennic before he was obliterated. The greatest space Australian from history, gone in an instant. Briefly on Galen Erso, his name could possibly be taken from Galen Marek, the protagonist from the Force Unleashed games. In the novelization of Rogue One, he's also said to be hiding as a farmer in order to occupy his mind. You see, he doesn't have a natural affinity for farming and is almost always at the point of mental and physical exhaustion. So as a result, his mind won't drift back to his work, which could risk exposing his family. Also, on K2SO, he's actually a KX security droid and debuted all the way back in 2014 in the mobile game Star Wars Commander.
Congratulations, you are being rescued.
Let's get on to some returning characters. Now, Darth Vader will go over in more detail in a bit, so let's start with Mon Mothma. Now, she's actually played by the same actor who portrayed her in a Revenge of the Sith deleted scene. General Dodonna appears, and Princess Leia is digitally recreated at the end of the film, appearing as she does right before the events of A New Hope. Bail Organa, her father, is seen. He makes mention of Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's hiding out on Tatooine, and Captain Antilles. Not Wedge Antilles, but this guy who's very much alive, who later becomes this dead guy. Ponda Baba and Dr. Everson are seen on Jeddah, two beings who apparently just travel the galaxy picking fights. And you know what? I'd love to see them cameo doing this in every Star Wars movie from now. That would be incredible. Both Red Leader Garvin Dryce and Gold Leader John Vander make cameos through the use of repurposed footage from A New Hope. We also see the original Red 5 pilot bite it, meaning that position is now available for Luke to take. Grand Moff Tarkin returns, despite actor Peter Cushing passing away back in 1994. This was made possible by the role being played by Guy Henry, with the face of Cushing digitally recreated over the top. Like Planet of the Apes, but with a terrifying looking old man. And R2-D2 and C-3PO continue the tradition of being in every Star Wars film, except for the Ewok ones, by making a brief cameo. We see the return of a number of Rebel and Imperial soldier classes, plus like all Star Wars films, new variations on Stormtroopers are introduced. We get Tank Troopers on Jeddah, Shore Troopers on Scarif, with their colours being an indication of rank, Death Troopers, similar in design to the Dark Troopers from Dark Forces, and also the title used in the first ever Star Wars horror novel. Helmets for some of these actually debut in the Poe Dameron comic, issue 8, in a collector's room belonging to First Order Officer Terex. Also, these Red Royal Guards make an appearance, standing by in Vader's castle. And on that note, let's get into Darth Vader. His castle is located on Mustafar, the very same planet he got his arm and legs cut off, and then, he caught fire. Presumably, he set up shop here because it fuels his hatred and keeps him strong in the dark side. But I don't know, man. If I was him, I'd just live in constant fear that I was going to tumble over a railing, and then it all happens again. Interestingly, the Vader Castle is actually something that was supposed to be introduced to the Star Wars universe, potentially in The Force Awakens, but also as far back as The Empire Strikes Back. Concept art was even created, and it's described as a grim castle of black iron that squats on a rock in the midst of a crimson sea, which is not dissimilar to what we got. The interior is said to be grim and darkling, lit by the red glow from outside, and that Vader is at home and at ease, somehow. I'd imagine that he has to take the regular Bacta treatments, hashtag Bath Vader, like we saw Luke do when he got attacked, because his body is shot to shit and needs constant and ongoing medical attention. His suit also causes him extreme discomfort. Maybe because, some robots just slapped it over his charred body, with his clothes still melted to him. The armor he sports is also a duplication of the one seen in A New Hope. We get the red lenses you get flashes of in some scenes, the cape covering his shoulders, the chest panel, the last two of which are slightly altered in every movie. The detail even goes down as far to the fingerprints on the helmet, which were manually put on as the original sculpt was molded from a clay template, and so these were often visible. It was also thought that the New Hope version was more scuffed, as he was in possession of a number of armors, and he wears the more banged up one into battle. Okay, let's get into the new and returning vehicles. Among the Rebel fleet, we get the Tantive 4, where it's even mentioned that they should check the escape pods, which is of course what kicks off C-3PO and R2-D2's adventures. Then there's the EF-76 Nebulon B escort frigate, and the GR-75 medium transport. In addition to the red and yellow squadrons, we get blue, first seen in the comic Vader Down. The Y-Wings present could also be the same ones stolen in Star Wars Rebels, and one of the new ships, the U-Wing, is designed to reflect the models of that era, with visual effects supervisor John Knoll stating that the conceit is that it came from the same factory as the X-Wing. The prisoner transport vehicle that has Jyn Erso within looks to be similar to a Juggernaut tank left over from the Clone Wars, or a variation on that. We also get TIE fighters, TIE bombers, a new version in the TIE Striker, an ATST plus ATACTs, which stands for All-Terrain Armored Cargo Transport, which in this case they use to ship Kyber crystals. Plus we get the Star Destroyer from the beginning of A New Hope, the Devastator. That makes an appearance. Also, if you're wondering why the Death Star took so long to build after seeing its frame in Revenge of the Sith, this again is explained in Catalyst, as it hits a number of complications including sabotage, industrial accidents, and there's 4 chapters spanning 8 years that detail an Imperial marketing team dedicated to giving it the most sinister name possible. Okay, that bit's not, that's not true, I made that up. Gareth Edwards has also said that his movie makes reference to a number of others, specifically these ones. THX 1138 is George Lucas's first film, and I'm assuming the Carnival Claw retrieve the plans sequence is a nod to this scene. Irdu is confirmed to draw visual inspiration from the planet LV-426 from the Alien franchise. I think the beach battle sequences and locations used there were made to reflect the Thin Red Line, and the Rings of Kafrene, where Cassian Andor shoots a rebel informant in the back, looks a lot like future Los Angeles from Blade Runner. Also, did I mention his jacket? It looks like the Han Solo Hoth jacket a little bit. Did I mention that? I can't remember. I'm putting it here. It was supposed to go earlier, but I'm putting it here. I'm not changing it. This is a long video. Also, we get some references to Gareth Edwards' previous films, as he explains here.
In Saw's cave, there's some cave paintings. One of them is of the creatures that were in my first film called Monsters.
Okay.
And I think there's some Mutos and Godzilla
Perfect.
painted somewhere on there. I didn't ask for it. It's just they did it as a joke. And then I just came in one day and spotted it. It was like during the middle of a take.
And finally, the Han Solo film directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller were supposed to make cameos, but unfortunately, it didn't line up. However, Episode 8 director Rian Johnson did as a Death Star operator. And in order to return the favour, Gareth Edwards is also said to make an appearance in Johnson's movie, Episode 8. Okay, before the giveaway, I'm going to talk about Mack Weldon, that company that I mentioned up top that makes sweet looking hoodies, underwear, undershirts, t-shirts, polos, socks, sweats. And what's great about them is all the clothing is antimicrobial, which basically means you can wear them for ages and they won't get a weird smell. And look, I gotta say they fit really well, and I know this, I've got a bunch of them, and it's just top quality stuff. I mean, look at this. I mean, don't look at the guy, he's probably a dickhead, but the clothes are really great and cool. You can be the coolest, like this guy, but cooler, because he's a dickhead, as mentioned. Nah, he's probably alright, or maybe he isn't. I don't know him. But look, if you are interested, feel free to visit mackweldon.com and use the offer code Mr. Sunday Movies, all one word, for 20% off your purchase, which is a great deal. Also, all that is linked below. Okay, here's the winner of last week's Loot Crate. If you are that person, just private message me these details on my channel and I'll sort it out. Also, if you want to win next week's box, just leave any comment below. Literally anything. And maybe that could be on your favorite Easter egg, or even something important and significant from Rogue One that I've missed, because I'm sure there's a ton. Also, a like might help this video become more visible, because YouTube is being crap at the moment, and maybe that helps. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. Also, this Monday on my podcast, The Weekly Planet, we are talking Rogue One in detail. A huge, spoiler-filled recap and review of all the things that we loved and didn't necessarily from the movie. That's linked below if you're interested, along with some other videos that might also tickle your fancy. But thanks for watching this though. I appreciate it. Take care.